Hello, everyone. Welcome to Time to Come Alive. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your executive coach and your host. This time that we get together each week is an opportunity for us to become more conscious of ourselves, take a moment to really reflect. And also, because we're more conscious, we have the ability to be more connected, not only connected to ourselves, but also connected with other people. And ultimately, being conscious and connected leads to being more creative in life, right? To create something new, to think of new ways, to really bring something about in the world that didn't exist, especially something that brings you to life. And hence the name of this program. As usual, I would love for you all to join your friends and family in having conversations that also help you become more conscious, connected, and creative. So please go to social media and share that you're on this call, that you're on this session today so that they can join you. If that doesn't happen today, you're looking at this recording, please share on your feed, share on your social media, so that way you can engage in conversation about what you hear and insights that you have in the future. Now, we'll do a little mindfulness exercise to prepare our listening, just to prepare us for the conversation that we're about to have, and then I can introduce my esteemed guest to you all. So for just a moment, just want you to have a moment to sit firmly wherever you are, feel grounded and centered. If you're standing, that's fine too. Just focus right now on your posture. And take 2, perhaps 3 deep breaths, just oxygenating our brain and our body. Nice, deep, slow breaths. For some, it might be helpful to close your eyes if you're in a safe spot, or soften your gaze. And for a moment, I want you to reflect back to your childhood. And there's likely a time in your childhood where you had a favorite toy, perhaps a favorite game that you played, maybe a favorite book, or a favorite record, CD, cassette. Right? Think about some item, some element of your youth, your childhood, that meant a lot to you. I want you to just imagine you holding that in your hand, or being in that moment when you were playing that game, or listening to that music, or perhaps it was watching a show on television, or listening to something on the radio. Just put yourself back in that moment. Take another deep breath. And while you're there, think about, what was it that you learned about yourself or about the world as a result of that toy, of that game, of that song? What did it mean to you? And how has that had an impact on who you are today? Take another deep breath. And now just thank that inner child of yours for honoring that memory. Now you may open your eyes or refocus your gaze. There's nothing like reflecting on our youth. I think sometimes that makes a big difference in seeing where we came from and who we are, how we became who we are, how we became who we chose to be in this particular place in our time. I'd like to introduce you all a wonderful, I would consider him a friend actually. In just a moment, you'll hear from Carson Thompson. Now, Carson and I had the benefit of meeting a year ago. Well, it was my pleasure, probably more than yours at the time, Carson, but when I took a class on how to start and run a small business. It's been almost a year, it was in August last year. And in the class, this gentleman was full of life and energy, shared tons of fascinating stories in such an engaging way. And not only was the actual presentation and the content of the presentation interesting and exciting, he was one of the few people that I knew, and I think there were maybe 150, 200 people in the class, said, those of you who would like for me to look at your website, business plan, marketing plan, etc., please feel free to send me an email. And he shared tons of information with us as well. And I took advantage of that particular opportunity. And since then, Carson and I have been meeting, I don't know how often, Carson, I would say maybe every couple months or every other month or so, we've had a conversation. Because of you, Carson, I'm so proud of the website that I've created at valeriehope.com. He's really helped me hone my message and my tone, my voice. You have helped me also put together different types of marketing materials, because that's his expertise. The expertise is marketing. And today he's a business advisor, but formerly the CEO of the Bombay company. So I'd like for you all to welcome my friend, Carson Thompson. Hi, Carson.
Well, thank you, Valerie. It's very nice to have the opportunity to be on the program and to have the opportunity I've had to share moments with you where we discuss topics of interest and we're able to share things, explore things together, and even help me think back over my life and when I was at the stage of my life you are. And I try to do this with other people, identify with them or what they're like. And one of the things that always comes to mind is how uniquely similar we were at one point in our life. Because you, like I, and others, don't get to choose who our parents are. We don't get to choose the circumstance that we're raised in. We don't get to choose the kind of relationship that we have with parents. We don't get to choose where we go to school. There's just many choices in life are made for us because of our circumstance. And so what becomes the reality really is what we do with each of our circumstances. How do we react to it? And even with that, some of us are not equal. It just so happened, nothing special or unique for me, but it just so happened that I was born to parents and on a farm on a little town outside of Wilson, Oklahoma. And my father died when I was 2 years old of typhoid fever, leaving my mother with 8 children from my age of 2 to age of 16 for the oldest child. And yet there was just so much love and nurturing in our family that I was able to benefit from it. And one of those benefits, I really don't know how it happened, why it happened, but there was a particular book that my mother would read to me at bedtime to help me go to sleep. And it became my favorite book, and I really didn't want her to read any other book. And I can remember as consciously, with as much awareness as it was last night, at a moment in time, laying in bed in a small, narrow bed in our living room next to a wood-burning stove. We didn't have electricity, of her reading a book. And I'd heard it before. I heard about it. I began absorbing the principles of it. And I just made a conscious decision that was the kind of person I was going to be. And the book was the little engine that could. And there were things about it I understood about it at the time. There were things I didn't until I became more of an adult and became more aware of them. But there's about a dozen critically important truths in that book that when you understand them and you adopt them in your life, it shapes who you are. It makes who you are. And that had that influence on me. And some of those things were that you were willing to try things. The little engine that could was a little girl. Maybe people didn't even think about that, but it wasn't a boy, it was a little girl. And she was a little bitty girl. And she'd never pulled a train up a mountain before, and she didn't know that she could, but she was willing to try. And she started up the mountain, and she just wouldn't quit, regardless of how tired she got, how much she needed to break. She wouldn't quit. She just kept going until she got those toys over the mountain. And then while everyone was happy and congratulating her, then soon the rest of the world went on for everyone else, and the little engine was left alone again. So all she had left was her own memory, her own mindfulness that she was able to do something. And the rest of the story doesn't go on with this, but I imagined it to be that she began welcoming things that she could do, that she could try to see if she could make it work. And I began doing that. And I began taking on challenges that might not be ordinary. I just wanted to see if I could do them. And so throughout my life, I've used those principles, and I've come to organize them in a way that I speak to them quite often. I frequently bring them into the seminars like you attended. I do almost daily in the classes that I teach in high school or middle school, because I believe that if we master those things, if we adhere to those things, we'll be successful in life. And everyone gets to decide what success is for them. It may be a big house, it may be a big nice family, it may be jewelry or furs or a speedy car or trips. Whatever one's definition of success is, they get to decide. But then I believe these same principles are the ones that when you've decided what success means to you, then you know how to do it. And so I don't like to teach. I don't like to provide principles or opportunities without a how-to part of it. And so
Carson,
have that in it. So I'm going to let you and others ask some questions now.
thank you. This is wonderful. First of all, I have to admit, although I've heard of the book, The Little Engine That Could, I've never read it. I couldn't tell you what other principles are in the book that are important, but there's something about you saying that as a young person, reading or having this book read to you over a wood-burning stove that really has such a vivid image. Can you tell us a little bit about your environment, your environment growing up? And if you don't mind also sharing with us at what point in time, what generation you are, because I think that also helps people with some context, and how that influenced who you are today.
I was born on September 10th, 1939. I'm 80 years old. I was 4 when this happened with my mother. We did not have electricity in our house until I was 12 years old. We did not have indoor plumbing. We had an outhouse you go to go to the bathroom. We had a well in the backyard that we got our water. When you bathed, you heated water on a wood-burning stove and put it in a tub, and each one of us bathed in it, and we didn't clean the water in between, so you always wanted to be first. We did not have a telephone. There was no television. So many of the, I guess you would call them, modern conveniences I didn't have growing up. Electricity at 12, but we still used wood-burning fire to cook with, wood-burning fire to heat with. It was a part of my life. And with my father dying when I was 2 years old, it caused me to have responsibilities at an extremely early age in my life. And as circumstances were, each of my older brothers and sisters grew up. They graduated from high school. They moved away and got married. And the management of the farm fell to the next oldest boy. And when I was 14, my brother, just older than me, got sick. And I had to manage a farm. And it was a large farm with hundreds of acres of peanuts and 50 head of cattle. And it was mine to do, and I was responsible for it. And I just, I did it. So I learned to do at an early age. There are things that you can do that you might not think you can do if you just try them. And I think all of us might sell ourselves short of what we're capable of doing unless we're willing to consider the possibility that we might be able to do them. So I developed a capacity out of necessity of believing that I could do things. And I had my own little motto, and it was that if you're not going to finish, don't start. So everything I looked at, there's another aspect of it that I learned, and actually I learned this from a coach. His name was Bud Wilkinson. He was the head football coach at the University of Oklahoma. He won 3 national championships. He won 47 games in a row. That's unheard of. But he taught the principle that the most important thing you have to do is not have the will to win. It is have the will to prepare to win. And when you think about it with athletic teams or with playing musical instruments or being in drama, whatever you're in, when you realize the amount of time you spend in preparation compared to the amount of time you do the event, you need to become aware that preparation is critical. And you need to prepare for every aspect of it. For example, in the 3 principles that I teach about being successful, which are positive character traits, effective communication skills, and utilization of time, preparation becomes one of those critical parts of it that we have to do. And in doing them, when you realize, for example, that out of the 5 forms of communication skills of reading, writing, speaking, listening, and nonverbal, that in most circumstances in presentations, even in interviews, your nonverbal communication is more important than your verbal. So many people understand that I should prepare for what questions I might be asked or what questions I might ask, but do they prepare how they present themselves, how they look, how they dress, what their posture is, what their facial presentations are, because that has more to do with whether you're hired or not than what you say. So,
Carson, I just want to jump in real quick before we get too far down there, but one thing you mentioned about having the will to prepare to win. Right? I've also read that, when you're thinking about sports teams specifically, not only are they spending the majority of their time in preparation, but they also spend a good portion of time in rest and recovery and reflection. I'm curious, how did you apply those principles, like you mentioned, the preparing to win, into business? Because it always seems that there's something to win, there's something to strive for, but the preparation time seems to be less and less in the business context. Can you talk more about that?
It is as equal, and in business as it is in sports where you have a team, it's preparation for more than one person. This is just not for the CEO to prepare. This is for everyone who's engaged in that activity to prepare. So at the end of my business life at the Bombay Company, we had 3,000 people. We had 3,000 people to keep prepared. And you're edging into something a moment ago that is also critically important. And that is a part of what we do and how we do it is there must be time in between what we do and what we don't do that we get ready for the next thing. And I don't refer to this as taking time off or taking a vacation or resting. It's recharging. So you think in terms of recharging a battery to a telephone or a battery, we have to be recharged. And if we don't recharge ourselves in the way that we need to, in the amount that we need to, when we need to, then we're going to be less effective. So preparation is critical, execution is critical, and then recharging to get ready for the next is critical.
But Carson, when you remember your days back at the Bombay Company, how do you reconcile the need for a marketplace to be constantly moving forward in the cutting edge, right, against different competitors or really wanting to get market share? There doesn't seem to be a cycle that allows for that recharge. There seems to be a go, go, go pace to the business world. How do you reconcile that as a leader?
We're always preparing the people on the team for what comes next, for what to do next. And whether it's 20 people that we had when I bought the Bombay Company or 3,000 we got to, your organizational structure is constantly preparing your people for what's next. We are aware of competition. We are aware of the marketplace. We are aware of what is happening. We prepare ourselves for what is going to be done in the up. And it's a constant effort that you just keep doing. And the larger organization is it doesn't change. You just have more people. And we had people throughout the United States, Canada, and Asia. So my job, among other things, was to see to it that all 3,000 of these people were prepared. They did execute. They did recharge. They did exercise the positive character traits they needed. And by the way, I didn't tell you the three things. I must quickly get this in. There's three components to success. And I will absolutely guarantee anyone, everyone, that if they effectively do these three things, they will be successful. The first one is positive character traits. Positive character traits can include many parts of it, but they involve self-discipline, self-motivation, self-control, honesty, integrity, dependability, perseverance. There's a longer list that you can have of them. I have a seminar I'm working on doing that has over 30 positive character traits. And understand they're not character traits. They are positive character traits that must be learned and unyieldingly done. You never don't do them. You always do them. The second one is the effective communication skills, which is reading, writing, speaking, listening, and nonverbal. I mentioned the nonverbal. Listening is the next most important one because that's the one we do the least well. Too often when we are, instead of listening intently to understand and comprehend, we're thinking about what we're going to say next and wish the person would hurry up and shut up so we could say it. And the final one is time utilization. It is so critical. And I make an offer to the people when I present this one that I offer to make any person a billionaire if they can answer yes to any of four questions. And I'll do this quickly. One of them is if you can help me get more than 60 seconds in a minute. Second one is, can you help me get more than 60 minutes in an hour? The third one is, can you help me get more than 24 hours in a day? And the last one is, can you help me get do-overs in time? And when everybody has answered no, you can't do any of that, and I'm not allowed to make them a billionaire because they can't show me how to do it, then the question is, what does that tell you about time? It's just so crucially important. So I'm just telling people that if you practice positive character traits, effective communication skills, and productive time utilization, you will be successful in your personal life and in your career. And so my role as CEO, my role as teacher, my role in working with people like you that I have the honor to, is to teach them the principles and help them find these principles and how to do them that are going to change their life.
I will say, Carson, that those principles, especially positive character traits, I think that's really what drew me to you and your teaching, your ability to make your stories and your message come to life, your generosity. I think that's one. It wasn't one of the traits, the positive traits that you listed, but about generosity that I see in you so clearly. And I'm curious, what has you now, at this point in your life, spend so much of your time and energy giving back, like actually contributing to people's lives like me, the students that you teach?
So many people have done so many things for me, teachers, ministers, professors, business people, people that I've known, met, and learned from. They have taught me so much that I know is valuable and I know is important, so I can't not do it. I have to do it. There's something inside me that compels me to do it and won't let me not do it.
What do you get out of it?
The hope that they will learn and apply it in their own lives, and then they will share it. If we can get people who know this the way I know, I use a phrase in what I'm doing, and that is the first words in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." What he means is they don't have to be proven. They're so obvious. They're so certain. I don't have to prove them. And with these three truths of positive character traits, of effective communication skills, and productive time utilization, they're so obviously true that I don't need to convince anybody they're true. They can see that they're true. If they practice them in their lives, it'll demonstrate they're true. Then I want them to share them with other people.
I think that's really interesting. I'm curious about what you think now. What's the biggest shift when you see other leaders focus on other areas of business? I think you're pointing to something I read once in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a book that you can see I still
Yes.
I spent a lot of time in. And Stephen Covey in this talks a lot about the personality, I can't remember, personality character versus, oh my goodness, I can't remember exact term. But he talks about how people over time have really focused less on character and personality, right? For example, what you mentioned about honesty or self-discipline, those being the driving forces for how we do our work, like being a certain type of person rather than defining ourselves with some of the labels, like I am extroverted, or I'm a go-getter, or I'm innovative. There's something around the positive character traits being more noble, really about a sense of being versus some of the habits that we've created.
You see, when you think about these, and one of the best ones, examples, is the thing about, is your glass half full or is it half empty? Am I a positive person or a negative person? You relate that to what you're talking about with other people. And quite frankly, you realize how foolish they are. What we're about has nothing to do with whether my glass is half full or half empty. My glass is refillable. I can refill my glass. So the question is not, am I an optimist or a pessimist? It's not, is it half full or half empty? It's what am I going to do to fill it and keep refilling it and keep refilling it. And to the extent that people learn the truth of what's important in life, then I think they as individuals will find happiness, satisfaction, peace with themselves. They'll share it with their organization, because my organizations were like me. They were a reflection of me. And I would not let them be not like me. If someone in our organization was mistreating someone because they had more power than that lesser position did, I wouldn't tolerate it. I often told them, I said, if you're going to treat your people that way, you better start running, because I'm coming after you. We're not going to do that with people here. It's not going to happen. And every person in your organization needs to become the living embodiment. And so now the way that I can reach the most people right now is teaching high school and middle school. And I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I was told last Friday, one of the teachers told me that I've been teaching for over 15 years, and never before did I ever have a substitute teacher that I would let fill in for me regularly. I never found one until I found you. Wow. And then as I was leaving that day, and the assistant to the person that handles the substitute teachers, it was our last day at school, and I told her goodbye for the summer and reminded her that we were moving to Santa Fe this fall, but I thought I might be back for the early part of the fall before we left. And she said, well, I sure hope you do. Our students talk all the time about how much they love you and having you as a teacher. So, when you're getting across to them, you're always respectful of them. You're always considerate of them. And in preparation of being prepared, every day before I go to class, I envision, in fact, I do this at night in bed before I go to sleep, I envision what challenges might I encounter tomorrow, and what am I going to do if I do. So
that, Carson. Why do you do that?
Because I want to be pre-programmed that I don't automatically get upset and yell at this person. I don't abuse them. I don't call them out in front of other students. I want to deal with the situation in a positive way. And to do that, I need to be prepared for how I do it. And I don't talk to individuals. Sometimes when I'm making a point that an individual needs to learn, I'm talking to the entire class, not that person. While I'm doing it, I may walk up close to that person, but never look at them. They know, and everybody else in the class knows what I'm doing. That's how I'm going to do it, but I do it different ways. Different personalities needed to be treated different ways in order to reach them. So my objective is not to penalize them, for how they screwed up, because I don't know what their situation is at home. I don't know what happened that morning before they came to school, but I want to put a positive spin on this, hoping that they will recognize it. I'll share one more with you. There's one of the students that just kept talking to two other students and sitting next to him, and it was obvious those students didn't want them to. So I just stopped the class and I said, "Hey, listen to me for a minute. I want you to understand. I am very easy to get along with until I'm not. And you are the ones that determine whether I'm easy to get along with or not." Well, everything changed. That student knew who I was talking about. Other students smiled. It was all over. That student didn't do that anymore. And I never even looked at them. I didn't say one word at them. I had prepared what I'm going to do. And I used different techniques and different approaches. I did that with 3,000 people at the Bombay Company. I don't treat them all the same. They don't all have the same circumstances. But I understood, and this ultimately was the reason I retired when I did. We had 3,000 people working on our team, Valerie. Behind those 3,000 people were another 3 or 4 people. So I had 9 or 10 or 11 or 12,000 people were responsible for what I did. And they weren't controlling it. I was. They couldn't destroy the company. I could. And the pressure got so much finally to me after 17 years, I just said, I can't do this anymore. I got out of it with a pacemaker defibrillator rather than dying of a heart attack the way Charles Tandy did. I knew it was time to get out. And I had to for my family, and I had to for them. That I had so much pressure that I was seating in a car once, and my right leg just started uncontrollably shaking. I couldn't stop it. There was just so much pressure, so much tension. And that only happens if you care about people. If you don't care about them, it doesn't matter to you what happens to them. If it just matters what happens to you, then you're not affected that way. But if you care about people, and when I'm in the classroom, in the program that you're in, or in the classroom with seniors in high school, it's very serious. It's serious business. This is, I must do the right things the right way. I must set the right example. I must say the right things. And it's an obligation I take on. It's a privilege and it's a joy, and I love it.
I have one more question, and I want to get those who are listening in on the conversation. So those of you who are listening in, please share your questions on the chat if you prefer, or unmute yourselves in just a moment and ask, or let us know what your insights are based on what Carson or what I've said so far. So Carson, going back to, let's talk a little bit more about this idea of leadership and learning, right? You obviously care a lot for those who you were leading. What do you see today? Now you've been out of the corporate game for how long now?
Well, since 1997, so it's 22 years.
Okay, so since 97. But since you've still kind of been dipping your toes in, right, working with entrepreneurs or other business people, what do you see now that's missing that you think we need to either go back to or spend more time on?
Well, I see people who want to start a business and want to be successful in it the same as I saw them then. And I admire them so much and respect them so much and want to do what I can to provide guidance and insight for them. And I consider that an honor and a privilege. Unfortunately, at other levels, I see serious problems. I think our country, in far too many ways, has left its principles. That we don't have the character, we don't have the honesty that we need to have. We need some great people who live on the basis of honor, of positive character traits, and I see far too little of that now. And it worries me, and we're sitting here with a country of over $20 trillion in debt, and we can't sustain that. This country is going to go through a financial upheaval. I just don't know when it's going to happen. And it's so sad because so many people are going to be hurt, and I don't even know how you protect yourself. I don't know how we get out of it. At this point, there's examples of Greece and others, and it's true that every great civilization in history has died internally before they died externally, and we're doing it. And I'm not taking sides, Republicans or Democrats or liberals or anybody else, or any color or anything else. I want our country to be doing things that work, and we're not. So I'm very saddened by what I see happening. But I had a professor in college, sociology, who was talking one day about what we can and can't do. And he said that there are things that are wrong in the world, and you can't solve all of them. So all you can do is be on the side that you're part of the solution, not part of the problem, and do what you can and be satisfied with that. And I won't say that I'm satisfied with it, but I do know that I'm on the right side of history doing what I do. Does that mean I'm always perfect? Does it mean I never make mistakes? No, but you know me well enough to know how hard I try to be the best person I can be, the best role model I can be, the best teacher that I can be, to influence the lives of as many people in a positive way as I can. And I have two little phrases I use. One of them is that if you're moving fast enough, old age can't catch up with you. And the other one is to aspire to inspire before you expire.
Say that again, Carson.
I want to inspire before I aspire to inspire before I expire. I aspire to inspire before I expire. And to the best of my ability, my strength, my energy, I'm doing that.
I think that's phenomenal. It's one of the things I not only admire about you, I also see it in my parents. You know, they're both in their 70s now, and they learn. I think I got a lot of their energy and their zest for living because I remember my father, I believe, got his master's degree at age 55, 57 or something like that. He also got a black belt in Taekwondo in his 50s. You know, my mother is continuously involved in her community. And I find that there's some quality of life that is enhanced because they're constantly learning. I'm curious, at this point in your life, you're 80 years old now, what are you learning, or what is there left to learn?
There's still a lot left to learn. I'm studying and learning each day. Only last year, about a year ago, as a matter of fact, I came across the saying about are we positive or negative because our glass is half full or half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came across, I said to that, I said, Carson, you're stupid. You're smart enough. You're supposed to think of these things yourself. You didn't. You found it from somebody else. What else is there that I'm missing that is really a true lesson? And which ones do I need to be correcting like that one? So I'm always looking for those things about I can be better, I can do more, I can be more positive, I can learn more, I can share more. And the other thing is time management. You need time management so that you have time to get around to more people.
Mm.
I am, as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I are moving to Santa Fe. I've checked the 2 high schools there that I can teach at. The only university would be in Albuquerque. And I'm not really sure that with that distance and with the weather that I want to do those things. But I'm developing a program to do everything online now. I've written a book about how we did what we did at Bombay Company and Radio Shack and Tandy Leather Company, and I want to teach it. And I've written a book about, I've written a webinar about the power of positive mindsets. Mm. And how much mindsets affect our lives and business, and which mindset should we focus on learning, which ones are the most important, which ones will produce the greatest good in the shortest period of time, and how do we do it? So I don't think teaching things is as valuable as it should be unless we teach the how to do.
I get that. And Carson, you mentioned the definition for success, right? And you mentioned those 3 things: of positive character traits, effective communication, and productive time management. And I'm curious about when you were 4 years old and you were listening to The Little Engine That Could, what at that point in time was your definition of success? And how has that evolved over this time of your life?
My definition of success then was, how does a little person without experience, without all the degrees, without everything, pull that train over the mountain? And I decided that I wasn't sure of everything that you needed to do to make that work. What I was sure of, that I should try. And so I started accepting things. I began teaching a Sunday school class when I was 14 years old. I asked our church to let me do it. I had it organized with the students. I asked them to let me do it so I could learn communication skills, and they did. So I started at a young age saying, I don't know what it is that I need to know in order to do this, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to take it on. And in the process of trying, I'm going to learn. And I still do things. I still accept invitations to things, challenges to things, to see if I can do it and to see what I can learn from it. And there are many more stories in my career of what happened in Argentina, of what happened with the Canadian government, with what happened with the IRS, that sometimes the most important thing you learn about the things you try to do is you just don't give up. You learn not to give up. And every time you succeed, you become more inclined to try and not give up. It's amazing how much more, and I'm going to tell you one more story. I had a very good career in Tandy Corporation and had a lot of success in doing the things that I did. And I would meet with Charles Tandy, who is the master at doing things. And we just had phenomenal success in doing things. And I would meet with him thinking that he's going to praise me. But instead, he chewed me out. So he would say, for example, so, well, you had a 42% sales gain, right? Yes, sir. He's going to pat me on the back. Well, how much more would you had to have done to get a 45% sales gain? That's just 3 more points of sales gain. How much more would you have done, Carson? What would you have done to get 3 more points? And then he raises it to 48. Well, if you can get 40, then you can get 48, right? Well, if you can get 48, it's just 2 more, get 50. So the lesson from Charles was great is never good enough. And great is never good enough. You always want more. You always try for more. You compliment people for what they have done and say, okay, we've done that, and that feels good, doesn't it? Well, how can we get more? What can we do to get more? What things do we need to do? What training do we need to do? What people do we need? What associations do we need to do with people? What else can we do to accomplish even more? So you just keep setting your sights higher and higher and higher and higher, and you keep finding out that you can do them. And wow, I didn't know I could do that. Well, we did. So now let's do more. And you just keep going.
So besides that example with Charles Tandy, can you think of what's been a time when you've been really challenged, when you really had to take that advice from the little engine that could to get over that particular challenge?
Well, the biggest challenge was in Argentina. Do you want me to tell the story quickly?
Yeah, we do, yes.
I was offered an opportunity to become president of a Tandy division. And I'd been very successful in what I'd been doing. But we had a business in South Texas that had manufacturing facilities in 6 towns there. And we only had enough business for about 3 of those 6 plants. And I was appointed president in order to solve it. So I sized up the situation. I had no idea what I was going to do. I met the people. I knew that if I didn't come up with a solution, that I was going to have to fire a bunch of people. We're going to close plants. And when we do, we're going to devastate these little towns. And those towns were Shiner, Texas, and Hallettsville, and Cuero, and Gonzales, and Hallettsville, I think I mentioned, Yoakum. And I found a program in Argentina where if you got cut parts, you could get tremendous advantages in export credits and in currency credits. So we worked out the program. I spent time there. We did things. We put it together. We believed it would work. We committed to it, and it worked phenomenally well. And we were going into the marketplace where previously we had the poorest program of anybody in the country. We suddenly had by far the best. And we were cleaning up the market. We were taking business away from everybody, and it was phenomenal. And everyone was happy, and the little engine that had crossed over the mountain was going down the hill. And then there was a train wreck, because in March of 1976, a military junta overthrew the Isabel Perón government and disbanded every one of the programs. And one of my business associates called me and told me what had happened, and said, Carson, we've lost this program. You're going to have to come down here, and we got to find a solution. So I went to Buenos Aires. During a military crisis with war going on in the streets of Buenos Aires. They were fighting. There were tanks in the streets. Jeeps with 50 caliber machine guns, soldiers everywhere, people being killed. This was a desperate situation. And I had an opportunity to meet with one of the members of the military junta in their government. It was Casa Rosada, the Pink House. If you know about Vita, you know it's the House of Government. I was going there, a dangerous place, meeting with one of the members of the military junta. And for 3 weeks, I worked on this with banks and businesses and the government. And during the time I was doing this, I had started out with an allergic reaction to shellfish. And I was hurting and I was sick and I was itching all over. And I was excusing myself in meetings to go to the restroom and put on a solution like the stuff that we have here. What's it called? The name
Calamine?
Calamine lotion. And my clothes became so stiff that when I got back to the hotel room that night, I could pull my shirt off and lean it up against the wall. It was just unbelievable. And I was sick and I was hurting, and my wife was scared to death. And she and her 2 teenage daughters are back in Texas. And here I am working on this. And when I thought about it and my safety, my life, and my family, I realized I couldn't come home. I could not leave until I got this solved. And I stayed and I worked and I explored possibilities, and I met with Senior Klix, K-L-I-X, a member of the military junta. And we began working through this as possibilities of how it could be made to work. And after 3 weeks, we got a solution to it. I lost 15 pounds, and you know me, I'm kind of slender to start with. I was hurting. I was mentally exhausted. I was itching. I had whelps all over me. But I couldn't quit, because to quit, I had to come home and tell my wife and my 2 daughters that I had failed. I had to tell several thousand people in our company that I had failed. And I had to tell Charles Standy that I had failed. And I couldn't do that. I had to stay there and stay there as long as it took. And I guess if I hadn't have got it solved after 3 weeks, I'd still be down there. I don't know. But I finally got it solved. And so, you know, when these things happen, you solve one of these, you become the hero, and, you know, and all the stuff that goes with it. It wasn't me. It was all of the people we had, the things we did with the program, but we made it work. And because of that, I was then assigned very quickly 5 more divisions in the corporation. And then the corporation separated into 5 separate companies, and I became chairman and CEO of one of them. And it was into that company in 1980, I bought the Bombay company. And with the Bombay company, we took it from 2 stores to 440, from 20 people to 3,000. And from the $26,000 that I'd paid for it, of company money, not mine, to a market value of $1.1 billion. Wow. If I hadn't have stayed in Argentina and solved that, it never would have happened. Bombay would have gone into bankruptcy and gone out of business. But I was a little engine that could person. I don't fail. I don't quit. And I just keep going. And that may have not have been, I've thought about it many times, that may not have been the smartest thing for me to do, to be in that environment with shooting going on, where I could have been killed and left my wife with 2 teenage daughters. But when I weighed all of the factors of what could happen, the things that could go wrong, I couldn't leave. I couldn't quit. I couldn't give up. And I did the same thing later with the IRS, and I did the same thing later with the government of Canada, that as in many other instances of smaller things, the wage and price controls that Nixon put in place in August of 1971, I mean, these were critical, life-changing things. I wouldn't quit until they were solved, because I'd made a commitment when I was 4 years old of who I was.
I think that I think we could. That's like a mic drop moment, Carson, because I think you're coming full circle. Whatever challenges that we all individually face, whatever that message is that we want to share, I think the thing that really draws me to the stories that you shared with me, including this one, and this positive character trait of self-determination that you took on at age 4, is that you took on a way of being. And that way of being informed the actions that you were going to take or not take throughout different points in your life. Things that I really appreciate about you is not about the circumstances, right? It's not about the situation. Is really about who you chose yourself to be, and then you get to generate that every time you confront or you're involved in some situation that calls forth that way of being. And that's one of the things.
You don't have to be 4 years old listening to a story for you to have a beginning in your life like this. You can start at any age.
Yeah.
Anytime, any circumstance, regardless of what your situation with your job is, or your marriage is, or your children is, or anything about your life, you can still start this kind of a thing in your life. It's not time constrained. It's not limited to 4-year-olds on a farm. It's at any time and any place you can start being this kind of person, and you can start practicing the positive character traits and the effective communication skills and the productive time utilization. Start at any time. And the way I've done it that works for me, there's more that goes to it than this, but the simplest version of it is that I have not found myself very successful in stopping doing things, but I have found great success in changing things. Replace.
An example?
Replace. So I'm just going to give one that's not true, but if you're smoking and you want to stop smoking, start doing something else every time you have a need to smoke. There's some things that character traits that I learned growing up related to money, and we didn't have any, and there was just an automatic reaction to what you do when it comes to spending money, and that you start with, I don't have the money to spend. And I grew up into adulthood with that, when we had money, but when my wife would want to do something, automatically it was, no, we don't have the money. We shouldn't spend our money on that. Well, all it is just me repeating something that I learned early in my life that is no longer valid. So I need to change it, so I replace it. So anything we're doing in our life that you don't want to do anymore, think of something that you can replace it with, so that every time that thing happens, then you replay it with the new thing. Next time it happens, you replay it with the new thing. And the next time you replay it with a new thing, I actually go back and do things over. I did them one way. I didn't like that way. So I can't go back in time and change, but I can right now replay that in my mind of how I wish I'd done it. And if you do that enough times, you change.
Oh, well, I'm going to echo the sentiment, Catherine, who wrote in the chat that she wrote, I could hear him speak all day, and I could too. You're so insightful, and I so appreciate you, Carson, for not only what you've done to support and serve me, but also what you've taken on in this life of yours to contribute, to share, to enhance the lives of other people. So I'm really grateful for you to be on our program today.
Well, thank you. It's been my privilege. And I just remember, as I told you yesterday, there's a part of me that does what I do because I want to, but there's also a big part of me that does what I do because I have to not do it. I'm so obligated that I'm working the rest of my life to pay off that obligation of what people have done for me.
Beautifully stated, beautifully stated. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I just want to thank all of you who joined us for Time to Come Alive today. Please, again, share on your social media. I will be posting this video and this audio on SoundCloud. So feel free to reach to either one, YouTube or SoundCloud, to hear this conversation and share it with your friends. And just hashtag Time to Come Alive so others can find it. Next week, on June 11th, we have a special guest as well. I only have special guests on this program. But Mariam Alam, who is a graduate student, a mother, she's a wife, and she's from Pakistan, and she's going to be sharing with us how the practice of Ramadan in her Muslim faith has really enhanced her life, and in ways that we can all enhance our lives too. So thank you so much, Carson, again. Thank you, all of you, for participating and listening this morning. And I wish you all the wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.